The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the agency.
Welcome to DYCD Next Gen. I'm your host, Ryan Cooks. Our monthly podcast features the very latest on everything DYCD has to offer, and we go right to the heart of the story, speaking to people about the issues they face in their daily lives. This episode, we're focusing on Youth Hope Month, which shines a spotlight on runaway and homeless youth. Today, we are discussing the annual youth count and its importance, and we'll also take a look at youth homelessness and some of the misconceptions around it. Joining us today is Justin Mendez, Youth Count Coordinator. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Before we start, could you let the listeners know, again, who you are and what do you do here at DYC? Like, what's your role?
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Mendez. I'm Youth Count Coordinator. I work in the RHY Runaway Homeless Youth Department, and I am basically in charge of helping to make sure that the youth count for 2026 goes as smoothly as possible. So I've been contacting different stakeholders, planning events, things of that nature, going through the surveys, editing the surveys, researching surveys in other states and cities to make our survey stronger, trying to diversify the responses that we get. A lot of interesting things like that, just trying to make sure that the youth count this year is reflective of the population in New York City.
Just going a bit more into detail about what is youth count and why is it so important?
Youth count is a count that we do towards the end of the year, usually the last week of January, what is considered like the coldest time in the year. And we go out and we try to count as many youth in the city as possible, youth and young adults. And we want to see the population of homeless youth in New York City, and that can sort of be a guide for the services that we offer and things like that. So we know how many people we need to serve, and out of those people, what demographics do they share? Is there any demographic trends, things like that? So I would say that's the importance of youth count.
How long has the Youth Count Initiative been around for, and what have you seen change over the years? What has improved? What had how has it evolved since then?
So this is my first year doing it, but I know Youth Count has been around since 2015, and it was initially under HUD, the Housing and Urban Development. Something that is a big change is having a youth count role, because that wasn't always a thing. So I think that that's really good, and I'm very honored to be a part of that, and making youth count something that is special, needs a special role, and is an important thing for DYC to do. So I think that's one of the major changes, honing in on youth count.
I want to get into youth homelessness. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about it? I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that.
So I have experience before I was in this role. I was working in a DYCD shelter, and I worked in other shelters as well. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people who are homeless youth and homeless people in general is that they're somehow different than the general population. People, when I tell people what I do, they be like, "Oh, is it scary? Or are the people violent there?" And it's well, yeah, some of them are, because some people are scary and violent in general. But also some of them were just people that were working actively and going to school and had the same hobbies and the same personalities as anyone that you'd meet. So I think that's definitely by far the biggest conception, and also one of the most damaging misconceptions, because I think the perception that they are somehow different in a negative way, it leads to a stigma and a bigotry and a bias around those groups of people. So I would say that's the biggest misconception, definitely.
It's more of people put them in one box.
Yeah.
When they're still human and everything.
Yeah.
And people have to understand and realize that.
Right. Because the only main difference between someone that is homeless and someone that is not is a housing status. Everything else is literally just everything else. That's the only difference. So I think that people, and that's also something that's not permanent. So you can be homeless one day and not be the next, and vice versa. So I think that the conception that somehow that your housing status rapidly change or like vastly changes who you are as a person is definitely something that's very negative.
So people often assume homelessness is visible and like something like obvious, like someone could tell like, oh, you're homeless, you know, based on the way you look or like how you might carry yourself and everything. In your experience, what are some of the hidden forms of homelessness, especially among youth and young adults?
I think, especially with younger people, a lot of the times, like they are still like, they might be like in a RHY shelter, so they still can be like accessing showers, accessing meals and stuff like that, like literally having extremely typical lives as opposed to someone who has a home. So I think that literally you do not know unless someone tells you that they are. And I think, yeah, there is definitely a lot of it's hidden because a lot of it doesn't need to be said to anyone. Like I have a house, but I don't go around telling everyone I have a house. So it's like,
right.
people, it's definitely hidden. But then I also think that a lot of people are experiencing homelessness but don't know. Like people who live out of their car, like you're technically homeless. But I don't think they might not consider themselves that. Or if you're couch surfing, you're like staying at a friend's house and then a couple days later at a different friend's house. Like those are all things that would be considered not having a stable place to live or like a home. Right. But I don't think they consider that homeless until they're like they consider like street homelessness like a completely different thing. Or like even like working with like 18-year-olds and like teenagers who are in the shelters, they don't necessarily consider themselves homeless because they view that as a home. So I don't know. It's kind of like, yeah, I think it all just depends on the person. Like you never really know because everyone's perception it's so broad. So everyone's perception is so different. But,
yeah. That makes sense. I'm also interested, like, what role does the transition from high school into adulthood play in increasing the risk of homelessness for young people? And how might young people themselves underestimate that risk?
When you are transitioning and you're also getting older, because once you become like 18, usually most people will graduate high school when they're 18, and then you become legally an adult, there are less protections. Like your family doesn't necessarily have to take care of you. But yeah, if you turn 18 and your family is like, we don't have to take care of you, like you're going to have to work, you're going to have to pay rent in the house, you're going to have to do all these things that can be a struggle if you're fresh out of school and you're 18. People who, if you went to high school but you didn't graduate and you don't have a diploma, that increases your risk for being homeless. You're not able to get a job. You're not always, but it's harder to get a job when you don't have that degree. So there are definitely ways, like once you turn 18 and you get into that adulthood, there's a lot less keeping you from the pipeline to becoming homeless. Young people definitely underestimate that because for a lot of people, which honestly it should be, people view housing as something that everyone just has a right to and something that is like constant, which it should be, but it's often not, unfortunately, which is why we need the youth count and why we need like the services that RHY and DYCD provides. But I think it's and like going back to like we were talking about earlier, like people view homeless people as like literally like sometimes like a different species or like a different population of people. Right. So no one's really expecting themselves to ever be in that situation. And then one day you might just be in that situation. Yeah, that's that. So I definitely think that that's something that a lot of young people do not expect or ever envision happening to them.
It sounds like you really have to like experience yourself or like know somebody who's like been through it to like fully understand it.
Right. Which I think is kind of the problem. Like I was thinking about this like earlier to myself. Like I think a lot of people struggle with relating or having empathy to people who they have not shared experiences with, which is problem. Like it's kind of like a culture of apathy that we have where it's like, okay, this has nothing to do with me, so I don't feel anything towards it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the issue because even if I don't have that experience, or if I didn't have that experience, I still would be able to find like that empathy, that understanding. And I think a lot of people just don't, and that's kind of a problem. Because we shouldn't need to be in someone else's shoes to like understand what the issues are. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. That was kind of a tangent. But, yeah.
Not at all. I think this is why the episode focuses on this. We want to bring more awareness and attention to it to let people know like, hey, this is a real thing. Like these are real people going through these tough situations. What I mean?
Anyone can become, and I think that's also like even people who are not homeless or have not experienced housing insecurity or instability like that, they still need, and we still benefit from these services because like literally, like for example, like there's natural disasters all the time. People end up homeless of any economic class or like social class. They can still end up homeless. Like there could be a storm, and it has happened, that wipes away your house, right? And there can be so many things like disproportionate amount of LGBT. I think like 40% of LGBT youth, of homeless youth are LGBT, right? So you could be living your life and maybe you're gay, but you're closeted, and then your parents might go on your phone and that's it. And now you have no home, and you might have never thought that was going to happen to you, but now you're here. So all the services that like RHY has and DYCD has, and like all these programs and the youth count, it's very important because back to what we were talking about earlier, like no one knows until they're in it.
Right.
And that is why like the youth count is so important. So we know exactly who we need to help and dedicate services and resources towards.
I think also like systemic factors also play a big role into it. Family instability, foster care involvement, discrimination, and the affordability of housing. How do you think that intersects with individual stories of youth homelessness?
Well, like, I guess that goes to what I was saying before, but like people who are marginalized have that higher risk of being homeless, especially LGBT people, but not even that. People that are poor, we're going through, like, especially in New York City, there's so much gentrification. Like people who have lived here for generations are getting displaced out of their homes. And when you are a person of color, the rate of homelessness for disabled people is much higher than the average population. Veterans, disabled veterans have a much, much higher rate of homelessness than a lot of groups of people in this country, than the average. So all of that discrimination, all that bias, and all of that oppression, it's literally in like, you could literally see it in the homeless demographics, the way that like the Black population, like when I was going through all these different surveys across the country, a Black population will be really, really small in like the whole state, but then the homeless population is like exponentially larger. And it's literally in like every state. And the LGBT rate is extremely high in every state. There's stuff like that. And the veteran rate is like astronomical. It's actually like very, very sad. The way veterans are treated in this country, especially if they come home with like PTSD or disability, stuff like that. So there's so many systemic factors. Like literally everything is tied to systemic factors. That's basically the bulk of it.
Young people, a lot of young people, when they think of like homelessness, they think like that can never happen to them. So how do you address that mindset in your work, and like what message do you have for the people who believe that they're too far away from homelessness to like, I mean, we kind of touched on it, but like maybe you can go a bit more into that. Like what message do you have for people who believe that they're too far away from homelessness to like actually care about it?
Well, just like going back to what I was saying, like the apathy, like we shouldn't need that. Like we should not need to be like, this can happen to me, which is the only reason why I care. And it's kind of just unfortunate that we have to have that, when in reality, it's like we should care because we are everyone in our society makes up us. Not also as a country, but like as a world, we should all just care about each other, just because we are all people on this earth, sharing it with each other. some of the homeless people I would work with, they wouldn't consider themselves homeless because to them, they view homeless as being like the people on the trains and stuff like that. So they're like, well, that's not me because I have like, I do laundry and I do all this stuff. So it's not me. But it's like, not trying to be rude, but like, eventually those people are also all teenagers. Like everyone that's an adult was once a teenager or like a young person. So the likelihood that that will be you is not zero. So that's what I would talk to them about. It's like, we have to have that empathy because we literally never know. And as much as I feel like that shouldn't be, it could be you, should not be the driving force to care. Like that's just how some people perceive that. So I would talk to them like about that and like tell them like we have to like lock in so we can use, and that's a great thing about RHY services too. It's like we have to use all the services that are available while we're in that age group to move ourselves out of this situation and then learn how avoid going back. Understanding that no one knows the rest of the way your life is planned. So we should have these public policies and these programs in place because first of all, there are people who need it around us. And then second of all, that could also be us. I think that's a very, very important messaging for people to hear because with the way the economy is going, like, bro, we don't know. Like,
I don't even want to talk about it.
we don't know. So it's just very important. And it's also very, I think, inhumanizing too, understanding that a lot of these people that are homeless that we see, like, okay, like even like the quote unquote, like the visibly homeless people, they're also going through things. Like sometimes before I understood everything, I would see like if I saw like a homeless person on a train, like, you know, crashing out, I'd be like, okay, interesting. But I thought about it and I was like, when I crash out, I have my home to do it in. They don't have a home to crash out in. So
everybody's seen them.
Yeah.
It's in public. Yeah,
everybody everyone crashes out, but we do it in the privacy of our home because we have a home to go to. And I'm like, all right, work was bad today. So I'm going to go work. I'm going to go and do what I have to do. But their home is literally this train or the street. So that's where they do that. And then when you pile it on with like not being able to shower, not being able to eat, you know, being like judged by everyone who walks past you, it's like, yeah, that's the way that they are because they're faced with that. They don't have like any safe space or a quiet place to go to. I was talking to a homeless youth one day and she was like, I want you to think about the last time you didn't have any place to just be alone. And I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, I would probably have to, I'll be losing my mind. Like, cause even in like some of the shelters, like there are no like spaces to just be quiet and everything is like shared. And when you think about literally not even having like a second to be by yourself or to be in private, it just like, and you put it in context, like the way people behave into context, it makes everything much more easier to understand and to actually have that empathy. So I think humanizing those people and putting their experiences and their behaviors and their actions into context in the scheme of things, that definitely is helpful in all of this and it's like changing your mentality the way we view homelessness on an individual level and as a larger systemic issue as well.
Right. Based on your time working here, like, have you had like, has there been any experiences like personally, like it can be like with somebody from homeless youth that like opened your eyes to things, or like did you learn something new about homelessness and youth homelessness in the city?
Working in a DYCD funded shelter was definitely eye-opening. And then working at DYCD in the youth count role, and actually I think going through this other surveys, like the other youth count surveys in different places around the country and like doing research really helped me see things that I didn't even think about, like the statistics and stuff, like homelessness around immigrant populations, things like that. That has like really like looking at that data and seeing like, okay, there's populations that I didn't even think of that are going through stuff, like even things I assume, like seeing the actual like veteran numbers like stuff like that, like things like that. Is like actually looking at the numbers and looking at the data and seeing like the hard numbers. I'm like, yeah, it's much larger than I thought that it was. I think that actually going to like and actually doing the youth count events, because those are in like January and stuff, will definitely also be an eye opener for me. So I'm excited to like actually get to the youth count itself, which I don't know if I mentioned, but it is from this year. It's from Wednesday, January 28th to the 31st, which is Saturday.
Could you go into more of like what happens on these dates?
So we're working to have an event for the LGBT population. That's definitely a population that needs to be more represented in the youth count surveys. So I was very like, I did think of the idea to do that. So but that's going to be in the future. So we'll have a big, very fun activation event. So we go out, we're going to have like a party. There'll be youth count surveys done at the parties. We give out incentives, things like that. And then we go out to different locations around the city, and then we survey people, and we try to get as many surveys as possible. And that's pretty much like that bulk in those like few days. That's what we do. And then there's in-person surveying, there's virtual surveying. So there's like different ways that we try to reach out to as many people as possible. And that's
so people
that's
have the
bulk.
choice to do it in person or virtual.
Mm-hmm. Okay. People have the choice. And then it's going to be very fun. It's going to be very fun. So
sounds exciting. Yeah.
And there's a lot of great organizations that help work with us, and it's a lot of like hands on and like boots on the ground. Like a lot, we're going to be around, so it's going to be fun.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Looking ahead, what does the future for youth count look like, and what changes do you think are most urgent to reduce youth homelessness in the next 5 years?
I think the future for youth count will be just what we're doing now, but just getting better every year. Making edits where we feel like edits need to be made. Working with as many organizations that cater to as many different demographics as possible. Because the more diversity in the numbers is always the better, because we want to get a full scope of everything. So that's when I see the next 5 years, I see just having even more participation, more larger numbers every year, but the quality and the diversity of the numbers are just as important as the amount themselves. Right. So just trying to work with as many different groups of people that we can. And then I think reducing youth homelessness, the number one, I think, is just definitely, to me, it will always be about affordable housing. Because also, like, when we're talking about how many young people are there because their families are also fell into homelessness, right? So I think if we had more affordable places to live, then it's kind of like a direct correlation. Like, if people can afford housing, then homelessness will go down. Like, that's pretty much like a 1 + 1 = 2, at least in the way I view it. Right. So that's what I think should happen, just making everything more affordable. I don't know how that would happen, but I definitely think a focus on affordable housing, opening up, making vouchers more widely accessible to people, things like that, definitely. Whatever can be done that is like a people first approach to housing and to money and all that thing. I think that's the most important thing to reduce.
Well said. But is there, Justin, anything else you'd like to say or add before I close off?
I think in this conversation and in general that we definitely do need to have just empathy and love and understanding for the people that we live around and that we live with. Even if we don't understand, or even if we never share those experiences, I think that is important. And I'm very, very happy and honored to be a part of Youth Count, because reflecting those experiences and reflecting the people that are experiencing this homelessness and all these like things that can be very, very life-changing and very, very traumatizing. Housing should be a human right, and unfortunately it's not treated like it is. And not having housing is something that is very inhumane. So I think youth count is important to reflect those experiences and those people and have their voices heard. And that's the most important thing right now. And also, if you would like to be included in youth count, if you would like to be a stakeholder, if you would like to get surveyed, if you would like to be kept up to date on our events that we have planned for youth count and everything of that nature, you can reach me at the youth count email, which is youthcount@dycd.nyc.gov. Thank you.
All right. And yeah, that concludes today's discussion. For more information on DYCD, check out nyc.gov/DYCD, or be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Join us again next month for another episode of DYCD Next Gen. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan, and thank you for listening. And thank you, Justin, for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.